1 week season.
What is up, OWS fans? Andrew here with another MLB Best Ball draft. This time I am joined by longtime OWS contributor Larejo, who has been known for his football content, but also enjoys baseball and MLB Best Ball. Larejo, say hi, introduce yourself, tell us about your love for baseball.
Hello, OWS fam. Thanks for having me, Xandamere. Baseball, MLB Best Ball, probably my first foray into Best Ball 3-4 years ago. I'm a pretty similar style player in every sport that I get into, and it's just a lot of fun. I mean, I think it's especially to get through these dog days from when NFL ends and then the warmer weather comes around. Always love it. So yeah, thanks for having me though. I'm excited to get this one.
Yeah. I got to say you're right. MLB the draft season is perfect timing, right? I mean, it's football has ended. The weather is still winter, right? And I've always loved fantasy baseball, but you don't have to deal with all the daily moves and all that. So anyway, we see Larejo here, not me. Larejo's drafting. So he's got the 6th pick, which is he noted, I'll let you make whatever pick you want. It's not a lot of choice.
Well, I'm likely going to choose one of these two.
Okay.
And the reason for it is, of course, the 6th pick is tough, right? You have to either commit to Bobby Witt Jr., and then you're going infield early and losing that outfielder up front in round 1. Or you're jumping a little bit ahead, and I'm not crazy about a guy like Kyle Tucker with the loaded Dodgers lineup now that he's in. I mean, he's going to have a higher projection for runs and RBIs and all that, but he's also going to have to share the wealth a little bit. So I went with Tatis. I think his ceiling is just as high as anyone outside of Judge and Ohtani, and then we'll see how this plays out.
Yeah, I do agree because you get towards later on, there's a bunch of guys, and Corbin Carroll's injury changes this, but the back half of round 1, you've you've usually got Julio, Tatis, you've got Tucker, and then you could also get I don't feel as bad drafting an infielder at the end of round 1 as I do mid round 1. So if you got a lot of choice and towards the end of round 1, but it feels like there's not a big difference between those guys to me. I don't want to use picks pick 6 Tatis. You can get Tatis pick 10 or 11 most drafts. And so it's well, I'd rather have pick 10 or 11 so you get the earlier pick coming back the other way. So yeah, I would kind of agree with you. It does feel like an awkward draft pick right now.
It is. And you know me though, I like awkward. And so I'm happy to be talked out of any of these picks as we go along here, but any chance that I can get to, not completely, you never want to turn the draft on its head too much, but would it be more comfortable to take a Tatis at 9, 10, 11 or later? Absolutely. I'm hopeful that, we can start looking at some of their teammates after round 2 and the next pick, with the other Padres, but it's always interesting to me, the different combos that you can get when you do, I'll just say reach a little bit, right? Which I know is harder in the first round, but you're looking for something.
I mean, I talked about this a little last year too, where when you stick really close to the ADP in the first couple rounds, which most people do, and there's a fair case to be made for that, what you end up with is a lot of the same combinations. So most Ohtani teams look pretty similar with their picks 2 and 3 because of who's available. Most, picks turn around pick 12, a lot of those teams, those pairings are very similar. And so if you're willing to change it a little bit, you can get different pairings where, Tatis is not often going to be paired with, I don't know, off the top of my head, Jackson Chourio, right? Tatis and Jackson Chourio, just because of their ADPs and because of how close the draft sticks to ADP in those early couple of rounds, those two players are rarely on the same roster. And so if those two players have amazing seasons and everyone benefits there's someone in every pod that benefits who has one of them, but who's going to have two? Who's going to have both, right? No one's going to have both. And so the benefit there is by going off that board a little bit, you can create unique pairings that set you up just differently. And really the difference, once you get past those first couple guys, the difference is not enormous, right? In between, Wood and Jordan and Chourio, for example, the difference is not huge, right? Their ranges of outcomes overlap. So it's entirely feasible that Chourio could take a step forward this year and move up into that next year we're drafting him in the back end of round 1, right? It's if he has a 1,500 point year or 1,600 point year.
Completely agree. And those were,
Sure, yeah.
I was looking at he and Wood, if I'm being totally honest. And then, it's actually rare that Scooble's even falling. I think this far, I know his ADP is 18, but I've been in drafts where he's going at the turn, 11, 12,
Yep.
maybe even a couple picks after. And I think you share this with me, taking the top tier pitcher, maybe it's from getting burned by Spencer Strider 2 years ago.
Yep. I remember that.
Right. The wounds are still fresh. There's just so much that has to go right, and those arms, especially among MLB pitchers, are as fragile as anything. So I think this is also your style. I'm typically waiting till at least like round 5, 6, maybe.
Yeah.
You can still get an ace. So
I don't even have a ton of those guys, to be honest with you. I have some, but like pitchers are so fragile. What I do though is like I have a little bit of Scooball and Scanes and Crochet, and because those guys are, for as fragile as they are, for as risky as those early round picks are, those guys undoubtedly have the ceiling to put up the highest score at the position, right? To put up the kind of ceiling. Like you didn't need Scooball to win. There's no one player you needed to win last year necessarily. Cal Rowley's probably pretty close, just because of his extremely low draft cost. But like those guys can put up the kind of scores that are, I don't want to say can't win without, but are tremendously beneficial. And so you do want to think like, okay, I probably don't want 0, or at least I think that. And so I tend to look through, when they come past ADP, I'm like, okay, I'm a little interested now.
Right.
All right, you're up again, my friend.
Yeah. So I would consider here first screen Caminero or Merrill. Merrill, the obvious correlation with Tatis. Caminero, he could hit Bobby Witt Jr. totals. I mean, 45 home runs last year is kind of insane. They did play in that different ballpark though, so I'm going to probably go with Merrill. Is that what you're going to say?
I was going to say that. Like, I mean, Caminero had an amazing season, and he's highly touted prospect for a long time. Like, it's not like it came out of nowhere. I think he's a great player. He's going to have a great career. I do think that 45 home runs in that AAA park they played in last year is a little different than 45 home runs at Tropicana. Yeah. So, I think you've got to temper expectations a little bit on him. I think he's going to have a good year. I think he's got, a great ceiling. It's worth noting Underdog's projection on him is about 120 points lower than he actually scored last year. So, whoever's putting these Underdog projections in, I don't know where they come from. They are, accounting for that. And then in our projections, when I look at, I use ATC projections, which is it's hosted on Fangraphs. It aggregates a bunch of major projection providers, and I have Caminero as the 10th ranked infielder, so infielder 10, behind most of the guys you'd expect, like Bobby Witt, Jose Ramirez, Vlad, Gunnar, etc. So it's pretty close. He's ranked pretty close to where his ADP is. So I think it's reasonable there. I do think he's priced kind of for his ceiling. Like, it would shock me if he moves to a tougher ballpark to hit and he beat last year's home run total. Yeah. It
looks like most projection systems are putting him somewhere in the 35 home run range. To me, he's one of those. These are your quote unquote box scores, right? When you click on these, like if you're playing on DraftKings or doing another, and you're looking at who to play, you click on their latest game logs, and this is what pops up. So this is the data set we have to work with, and most people are going to react to. And when you click, a guy like Perdomo, who's coming up here soon, these guys who had monster years last year, it's really easy to fall in love with they're going to just replicate that, right? Whatever happened last year, that's going to happen this year. It's one of those we've got to always make sure we're filtering, and playing in the Yankees AAA stadium last year is obviously a major factor there. So
I have one pair of Perdomo so far in a that I made. What's funny is that Perdomo was on every single one of my team that made the finals last year, and so you'd think I love the guy, and he was awesome here. I just, to your point, right? They're chasing last year's production, and he's priced for his ceiling, and he clearly had a great year. But he also got incredibly lucky with, to hit as many home runs as he did, given his batted ball data.
Right. And that's what's so great about baseball, right? The rich data sets that are available to you. You look at things like home run per fly ball, fly ball rate, hard hit rate, barrels. I mean, it's plentiful. All right. So where do you want to take this here?
Let's see. I mean, I think either I would look at my outfielders. Let's see. I like I would take Yelich. Yelich.
Yep.
I'm terrible at pronouncing names.
That would be a nice start.
Because now you've got 4 outfielders, which is not a must. You don't have to go 4 outfielders, but generally speaking, going outfield heavy early on is the correct strategy. The majority of the time, it's been plus EV for every single year that we've had Dinger data sets. And stacking is incredibly plus EV, and we also know that I can't say this enough. Most best ball drafters do not stack aggressively enough. Most will stack like maybe one stack of 3 or 4 players, and that's kind of it. Or maybe they'll have a couple of like pairings, like they might have 2 or 3 2-player stacks on a roster. And like I'm trying to get like a 4 or 5-player stack, and like I want 10 of my 13 hitters to be stacked. Like overall, like I just think that correlation is so critical in MLB, and sometimes it's hard to get it early without really reaching past ADP, because it just has to line up so perfectly to get players on the right team coming up at the right spot. Some teams fit better than others, obviously, based on where their players' ADPs are. But like it's like, for example, the player in the 1 spot drafted Ohtani, and he just picked up Teoscar Hernandez. That ADP aligns perfectly most of the time. If you start Shohei, you can usually get Teoscar, right? And that's viable and fine. But it's harder to get other things, and it's really hard to get 2 double stacks in your first 4 picks. Like it's just the stars have to align for that, and so because of how rare it is, that's like when I get the opportunity to grab that, I want to grab it.
Yep, totally agree. And I've drafted about 20 Dinger teams so far. I don't think I've started with 4 outfielders on any team. And like you said, it's mostly because that's just not how the board has fallen, and so you find yourself having to reach. I was thinking this is a pitcher. It's going to be Sanchez.
I was thinking it was Sanchez right there. I was hoping, and I don't normally draft pitcher in the 5th round, but like a 4 outfielder start that's with double stacking is so strong that I probably would have gone. And Sanchez is, I think, I'm fiddling with my rankings again. I think Sanchez is now my 4th ranked pitcher.
Yeah, he's phenomenal. He should have a higher innings projection than Yamamoto, but
yeah,
I have no problem taking Yamamoto here as an ace, and you just hope that they can ride him.
It's interesting. Yamamoto, I mean, when I first did rankings a couple weeks ago, Yamamoto was the 4th pitcher off the board by consensus. And there was a gap between, it was like the big 3, then there was like a round gap, then there was Yamamoto, then there was a round gap, and then there was like Brown, Sanchez, Gilbert, Wu, that Reagan's, that cluster of pitchers. And so Yamamoto's ADP has dropped significantly, and it's happened very quickly. And I think that it has some. I don't think it's me. We didn't just launch our best ball product, but like if you look around, there's not that many MLB best ball content producers, and I know who they are. And so and I'm looking at where their rankings are, and I'm looking at like the ATC projections that people are looking at. I'm looking at the ADP in like the high dollar was the NFBC leagues. And Yamamoto is back because there are innings concerns, right? Like he's an amazing pitcher, but the innings are a worry. The Dodgers might use a 6-man rotation. They don't have any real need to push him to get into the playoffs. Like they're going to make the playoffs. He's a great pitcher, and I have no objection to taking him. I didn't think that he was different than like the Sanchez, Brown, Gilbert, Reagan, Wu, Webb group. I thought he belonged in that group. Yeah,
I agree with you. I mean, I think I understand why there's a bigger delta now between he and Crochet, Skeens, and and Scooball, because of just the the age, and then the wear and tear, and the potential for the teams riding them, quote unquote, like you said. But if he doesn't have a World Series hangover, hopefully there's. I would put him head and shoulders above this next crew. I do like Cole Reagan's a lot. I think his ADP was like 63 or 64. And I did think for a second there, we could reach for him because he kind of fits that mold of Sanchez, and younger guy. He was healthy towards the end of last year, if memory serves.
Yes,
he could hit over 200 innings without a blink.
Yeah, he was healthy, and he came back really strong from that injury, if I remember right. I'm just going to go and check now, but like at the end of the year, he at start of the year kind of struggled, but like let's see, where are we? September, he had 3 starts, he had 13 innings, 22 strikeouts. 4 walks, 2.77 ERA in September.
Yeah.
He faced the Athletics and the Angels and the Mariners, so not exactly like a murderer's row of offenses, but like still coming back from a 3-month-long injury. Like if he's healthy, he's got a ceiling up there with just about anybody.
Agreed. Completely agree.
I'll say that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say we're new to this. We're not like in sync. The one pitcher that I disagree with being in that cluster right there to me is Dylan Cease. And it's again like you can make arguments for any of these guys, right? And part of it comes down to who you like. And that's fine. I'm not going to argue with you, but like to me, Cease is a tier behind that group. Not that he's not good, but like he really has only had like one elite season. And then a couple of like solid seasons. He has one season with an ERA under like 3.5 in his career, and so like he'll rack up the strikeouts. I think that he's getting a lot of credit for innings because he hasn't really been hurt. He's made 32 starts every single year for the past 5 years, but like I don't know that that's necessarily indicative of future health with pitchers. Like they're healthy until they're not. So I don't know.
I agree. And with Cease, going to Toronto, different park. He's now gotten paid, different motivations, possibly.
Yeah. You got Stowers. Oh, I just saw. I didn't know because it was you. We missed the pick. Kyle Stowers is one of my absolute very favorite picks.
I did it for you because I did listen to your stream the other night, and I know you're upset about missing out on him.
I very much.
Go ahead. Have your Kyle Stowers moment.
So Kyle Stowers, I mean, like this guy was, and also I have a Dynasty League attachment to this guy because I had him in Dynasty for a while. Back when he was a prospect and the Orioles wouldn't give him a chance. And then I eventually dropped him because like it seemed like he wasn't ever going to get promoted, or maybe I traded him. I don't know. I didn't have him last year. But he came in. So last year he only got 450 plate appearances. He hit 25 home runs. So he's on pace, like if he gets 600 plate appearances, he's going to get 33, 35 home runs. And all his StatCast data backs up everything. He has power to all fields. He's not a pure pull hitter. He had a 94th percentile expected WOBA, weighted on base average. He had a 95th percentile slugging percentage. He's a 98th percentile barrel percentage, a 94th percentile hard hit percentage. Like all of his like StatCast metrics and value. If you're not familiar with StatCast metrics, what these are metrics that are attempting to evaluate like the hitter's quality of contact, quality of their batted balls. Like we know that things like batting average and even home runs, they tell us what happened. They're not necessarily predictive of what's likely to happen in the future. We have to look a layer deeper to see what's likely to happen next. And Stowers' StatCast data is all up there. You go look at like the leaderboard for all these stats. He's up there with like Ohtani and Judge and Soto and like all the first round picks, and then Stowers. Right? It's just like he was not an especially heralded prospect. He was older when he was promoted. He did it over, not a full season. He did it on the Marlins, which is not exactly like a major, franchise team that everyone's paying a ton of attention to. So, like, I think he kind of is going a bit ignored because of those reasons. And he's just like, I think his ADP is creeping up, but like I have him ranked around. Stowers, where are you? I have him ranked 50. And his ADP is around 66 right now, so it's climbing. I think his ADP is about 75. You got it. He was around ADP 75 or 76 when I made that ranking, so it's creeping upwards. Let's see where it lands. You also grabbed Vinny, whose last name I will not even try to pronounce.
Pasquantino.
Yeah, thank you. You know how terrible I am at pronouncing names. But Vinny is, he had an amazing season last year, and now the Royals are bringing the fences in a little bit, which can only help him, right? They're lowering, I think they're bringing the fences and lowering the height of the wall a little, so it can only help him, right? He's in the prime of his career, prime age, like everything's lining up for him to have, I think, if he stays healthy, he should have at least as good a season as he did last year, and there's possibility for more upside, right? 32 home runs last year, 113 runs batted in, and there's room for growth there. So he is one of my very favorites. And then you got Michael Garcia to stack with him. So now, can you scroll down to your hitters just a little bit?
Correct.
So we have 7 hitters on this team, and 6 of them are stacked hitters, right? We've got 2 Padres, 2 Brewers, 2 Royals, and then Kyle Stowers by himself. But there is a very sneaky stacking partner for Mr. Stowers very, very late in the draft.
Yep, there's a few. I agree with that. And if you notice too, I didn't try to force this. I'm not trying to like pat myself on the shoulder here, but I definitely wasn't thinking, let me get 2 Royals, 10 minutes ago. But when we come up and I think we were considering Pasquantino against another, better. I forget who it was, but then I remembered that Garcia is like 15 picks or so after him, and
Mhm.
he's like he's a 25-25 guy potentially. Pascantino is obviously a 30 and 100, potential, and they've got Bobby Witt, and I'm sure the Bobby Witt owner who was picking right after me is not too thrilled, but
There's a decent
nonetheless,
chance the Bobby Witt owner has no idea about stacking. I mean, I feel like there's no shade on that player, right? But like
for
a lot
sure,
of
for
a lot
sure,
of these drafters just do not stack. So
it's possible. So I don't mind how this team's coming together.
no, I mean, I think the only thing that would have made me happier at this team is if you'd gotten Sanchez as your ace.
Agreed.
But I mean, no objection to Yamamoto. I just personal slight preference to
So
Sanchez.
here, we're actually lining up incredibly nice. So we can grab
You could
Contreras
get
or Terang for the
yeah.
Brewer stack. Who do you
So
prefer there?
here
Probably
is where,
Contreras.
in a vacuum, I'd prefer Contreras, but here's also where I'd go with like, well, who do I have more of right now?
Yeah,
There's also at least a possibility Terang comes back around, whereas Contreras definitely doesn't.
agreed. If I had a little bit more time, I might have grabbed Bradish instead, and or Kirby even for that matters,
Yeah.
and go pitcher, and then maybe you get Terang on the backside. But just in the spirit of not missing the pick, we'll go Contreras and see.
Yeah, I will note. I'm interested. Like, so your rankings. We were talking before the show in that he's not using my rankings here. He's a little bit different, and that's okay, right? Like, he's got his own process. But if you notice, if you were looking at my rankings, the OWS rankings, and you look at his rankings, which you can sort of see the my rank column there, directionally accurate. Like you can see, you're very high on Bradish. I'm also very high on Bradish. You're high on. You have Yandy Diaz a little ahead of ADP. So do I. You have Yuri Perez well ahead of ADP. So do I. You're a little behind on ADP on the team. So am I. It's like actually very very similar. And it's often the case when you see people who know baseball. Like neither of us are going to sit there and argue Bradish is awesome. No, Bradish is terrible, right? Like it's just about how
Right.
is he compared to these other guys. So like it's not surprised to see that we're directionally very similar.
Completely agree. And as I was saying, like full disclosure, I just haven't had time to really mirror my rankings to be a little bit closer with the OWS. But I would recommend any subscriber obviously get out there when you get the package, go download the rankings that Xandamere's put together because they're going to be the best guiding force for you. The other thing I'd say about rankings, which I just find always interesting, is like you mentioned, there's a couple players here that I have above ADP. It's very rare that I think when I started doing this, I'm like, if I really like somebody, I'm gonna pull them up 40 spots over ADP. Why not, right? Like, why not get 60, 70% of them? Baseball is such a tenuous sport. These guys get hurt all the time. And there's a reason, like, you'll see a guy like Dylan Cruz is a great example. He didn't play the whole season last year. He was like a number 2 pick, right? I think after Skeens, if I'm remembering.
Was Langford before him? I don't know.
He might have been first even. He was right up there, right? They were college teammates. And anyway, he doesn't have the stats if you click into it, right? But every projection system, he's got the starting center field job, I believe, in Washington. And every projection system is going to have him playing a full season and hitting his ceiling. So you get these guys that pop up in the player pool. I guess my point is, don't try to move them too far from ADP. There's a reason why there's a consensus ADP. But unless there's an injury, you can always put your own style on it. It's just always maybe plus or minus 10 to 15 picks, I would say. I don't know if you agree with that, but
the stuff where like, I mean, if you look at my rankings, the stuff where I'm really different in the field is like the late round flyer guys, like I love Yuri Perez, I'm not going to rank him 70th and also you just don't need to rank him 70th to get him, like I think he is an awesome pitcher. And I think that it would not shock me if he takes that step forward and next year we're drafting him, like next year's ADPs in the 60s or 70s, like with those guys, like where Gilbert, Wu, that whole pack is now. I would not be surprised to see Perez take a step up to that tier, but you just don't need to pay that price. Like I don't need to draft him at 70. He'll be there at 90 every single draft. He'll be there at 100 just about every single draft. Like I can get plenty of him.
Right. Yeah. So have your opinions, but then of course play the game, and you're competing against all the other entries, and you're just trying to beat this pool for this season, right? So
yeah.
I've had to rein myself in over the years, really, because my inclination is always to go really high, really low. And I've had a year with Michael Harris a couple of years ago where I think I had 60, 70% of him. And it was in the first week of the season. He crashed into the wall, catching a ball.
Oh, yeah.
It was never the same.
I had a lot of them too. I think it
So,
hurt his eyesight 'cause he swings at everything now.
yeah, he hits ground ball.
I will note I'm a little different, like in that I will downrank guys materially. Like I'm okay having total fades. I guess I have one share, like, and I will not have total fades like guys in the first couple rounds because like regardless of how you rank them and who you like better, it's undeniable that all those first couple round guys have the ceilings that can just crush if everything goes their way. But like later on, like I will happily have 0 of Perdomo, for example. I have no Jason Dominguez because I just don't see how he gets the at bats now that they've brought back Bellinger, and I just don't see where the at bats come from for him. So like, there's a couple guys I'm okay having none of, but like overall, I mean, generally speaking, yeah, like stay around ADP, but also like just recognize ADP doesn't mean that much once you get into the like 100+ range. The gap is pretty narrow. Oh, they're not Pena. I love Pena.
I was going to take Pena too, but I was debating. What are your thoughts on Robbie Ray? Quick.
Who else is left? I like Williams a little better personally, but I think Ray is totally viable. And like I will say, I take a portfolio approach, right? So like I like Williams better, so I have a little more Williams, but I don't pick Williams every time over Robbie Ray.
I have a little bit more Ray, so we'll go Williams. Those two and Woodruff were probably the 3 that I was thinking there. And no shade thrown at Ye Savage, very hard name to say. He's just so young and unproven, and this time last year he was in Single A, so
yeah, he looked great, but like, man, I don't know if I can buy that. Yeah, Gavin Williams, like, was it the sort of breakout that was widely expected last year? Mostly happened, but it didn't happen consistently. And if you go look at his season splits, his second half splits were like insane. Second half ERA of 2.18. Second half, where's his strikeouts? 78 strikeouts in 70 innings against just 26 walks. In the first half, he had a bit of a home run problem. You have 14 home runs, 97 innings. You usually want to see about 1 home run every 9 innings or so. So a bit of home run problem. Also a bit of a command problem. Plenty of strikeouts in the first half, but he's walking like 57 guys in 97 innings in the first half. He got his command under control. So does that mean it's going to continue? Who knows? But I think he's got that upside, right? Like if he's able to pitch, like if it was not just randomness that led to his second half results being so different, if it was in fact like he's getting into a groove, getting used to being in the major leagues, blah, 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 like really taking a step forward. And as a young pitcher, you could see that, then I think he could be, he's got a lot of ceiling to him.
Yeah, totally agree. And there are some teams too especially in baseball, there's some teams that have some, we'll just say they have a trusted staff because their pitching coaches are legends. And the guy his name's escaping me. I think Carl Wiltz. He's the Guardians pitching coach. And
yeah, it's Carl Wiltz.
I mean, how many times have you seen a pitcher go to Cleveland, which is, I guess, maybe more of a pitcher's park than a hitter's park, kind of neutral, and just have a career season, right? These guys come up in the minors all the time. You can go, even back to like CC Sabathia.
Well, a lot of them weren't really like hugely heralded prospects either. Like Shane Bieber was not like a top pitching prospect, right? And neither was Gavin Williams, and neither was who else am I thinking of? Carlos Carrasco. You're right. Go CC Sabathia. Like it's been happening for years.
Way back there, Fausto Carmona was another one.
Oh my God!
Tanner Bybee, who's now playing, right? I think he's another one that I like to target him a little bit later.
I also like him. Yeah, I mean, agree.
Right.
Yeah, they're like pitch, and the Rays are kind of the same way, right? Some teams are just like pitcher whisperers, right? Like coaching matters a lot.
Absolutely.
I'll also note Tanner Bybee would fit really well on this team because when you stack multiple pitchers from the same team, you increase your odds of getting like 2 start weeks spread out optimally.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Oh, I also like Woodruff. If Woodruff stays healthy, he's going to smash.
Yeah, I'm so tempted to go Schlitter, but I'm going to take Woodruff because I think I just have to be consistent there. I think I don't have too much Schlitter, but he's another guy who it's just, we don't know how many innings he's going to have. He was so good recently in the postseason, but what are they going to do with him? And Woodruff is the clear ace now with Peralta traded.
Yeah, I mean Woodruff was amazing last year too, coming back from injury. It's like if he can hold up and throw the innings, I mean he's like high-end SP2, I guess, probably.
Yeah, and there's something here in every sport, right? But when you have the season from hell, whether you're a team or a player, and in Woodruff's case, the player, I had him in a couple season-long leagues last year, and he was coming back from, I think he had about 3 different rehab stints that he had to cut short, and a couple of them were just totally fluke incidents. And so there is always, in my mind, a better feeling for betting on someone the year after they have a season from hell, that you just hope that karma comes back around in a positive way for them.
Well, it's interesting. People I do think that pitcher ADP is so tied to people's perspective of health. And there is a reasonable argument to be made that says we really can't predict when someone's elbow is going to break. Any pitcher is at risk of it. They're all healthy until the one pitch when it gives out. And yeah, there are some things that we know, like shoulder injuries are likely to recur. But other than that, like, they're all healthy until it falls off. I don't want to draft guys who are currently hurt, generally speaking, because pitcher injuries, it's common to say like, oh yeah, they're going to be back. And then it drags on and on and on and on. Right. But if a guy's healthy, like, why should we think that Woodruff is a worse bet to throw 160 innings than Tanner Bybee or whoever else, like, and speak of the devil,
he fell right into our lap. So we'll take him.
That is perfect.
And somehow we waited on this staff until really 115 with Perez. And I'm pretty happy with this as a 5. We've got to go on a little run here in infield, but
yeah, the infield's so deep though, and it's also like infields where I often try to complete and build out stacks, because every team rosters 5 infielders, right? So there's a lot of stacking opportunity with your infield.
Right. And this is probably the time where I'd start to search these teams and let's see what we want to start building a queue.
Yeah, so if you go Royals, India's kind of a late round flyer. Perez is okay. I didn't really like the catchers, but Perez isn't really a catcher anymore, right? He's mostly a DH.
He's going to be the DH because I believe Carter Jensen is their big prospect who's and
Perez is he'll still hit 30 bombs.
He mashes. I would put all 3 of them actually in here. Just Collins, just in case we want to go 7 outfield.
By the way, I'll note, we talk about this. The saying is scroll down. Like Carter Jensen, Isaac Collins, those guys don't have really robust projections, and so they're not getting drafted at all, right? But like those projections are just based on at bats, right? And like, what if Collins is a full-time player? Like he could very well end up being a full-time player due to injury or due to, I put Laureano on there too if I read Padres. But like he could be a full-time player, right? Like, is it likely? Probably not. But like, you're playing these giant tournaments, like you've got to find ways to be different. And one of the easiest ways to be different is just figuring out who's not getting drafted. Like I love Andrew Vaughn in my Brewer stacks. Vaughn somewhat quietly had a bit of a breakout year last year. He didn't mash a bunch of home runs, right? He only hit 14, which is actually not that high, but he also only had 450 plate appearances. But again, if you go look at Vaughn's StatCast, and again, if you want to like figure this out, just Google Andrew Vaughn StatCast, right? Player name StatCast. Andrew Vaughn, right? 75th percentile barrel rate, 79th percentile hard hit rate, 30th percentile sweet spot rate. It's a sweet spot is like that measures like where on the bat the ball is struck. 92% squared up percentage. 81st percentile expected slugging, 81st percentile expected WOBA, 81st percentile exit velocity. Like Andrew Vaughn mashed last year. He got really unlucky on batted balls and balls not leaving the park. Normally speaking, generally a player about roughly 50% of barrels, batted balls that are counted as barrels, leave the stadium and are home runs. He does not bat in Extreme Pitchers Park, right? Brewers Park is, if anything, more of a hitter's park. He had 40 barrels last year and only 14 home runs. You'd expect more like 20, maybe even slightly above 20, based on it being a hitter's park. If he has that kind of barrel rate again and gets to 600 plate appearances, he's probably going to get like 60 barrels, 55 to 60 barrels. So that's like a 25 to 30 home run year for him, kind of out of nowhere from a not even drafted guy. Like those are the kind of guys I like finding at the end. So I'm talking overall. You're
doing great. I'm thinking we're going to probably have 6 or 7 on here. This is going to likely be the last unstacked. So I'm going to go Jacob Wilson.
Okay. Yeah.
And I totally understand the knocks on him. He's a Stephen Kwan type, right? Where he's going to hit. I mean, he could win the batting title this year, but that's not going to win you the dinger. But the A's are investing in him. The A's lineup is much improved. There's a ton of talent in that lineup. And if he just gets to the top and just can rack up the at-bats, I like that just in terms of opportunity, especially with a couple of these guys who are going to be a little more on like the, Stowers, Pascantino. You're going
I'm high on Wilson. He had 13 home runs in 523 plate appearances. Like, he doesn't have no power, right? He has some power, especially hitting in that park, right? I could probably hit one out in that park. And I'm not on video because if you were to see me, you'd recognize I am particularly unathletic. But like, he's got enough power to, hit a few, and like that matters a lot when a home run's 14 points. The difference between 5 home runs and 15 home runs is a lot. Even though 15 home runs doesn't sound like a ton. I think he also has a little more speed than he's shown. I don't think he's going to be like a major base stealer, but like, it wouldn't surprise me if he put up a season of like somewhere between 15 and 20 home runs and somewhere between 15 and 20 stolen bases. And that's pretty close to what Perdomo's season was last year. He had 20 home runs and I think 28 steals, I want to say. And you're right, if he hits at the top of the lineup, in a lineup that should score a lot of runs, I tend to shy away from like the accumulators without a lot of like major ceiling performance capability, unless they're a really good accumulator, right? And he is. So
yeah, agreed. And there's value there, right? Like if he does get to in the projection spreadsheet that you put together, which I know is available for Best Ball Plus subscribers, when you can tinker pretty easily in that spreadsheet with the amount of at bats, you take a guy like this, he's not going to pop off the page with points per at bat for Underdog or any of these sites. But if he can get over 600 at bats and potentially be, let's say, top 5, 6 in the league, the opportunity is going to be there. So who knows? So I have a good amount of him. I have him more obviously on A's rosters, right, where you have a little bit of Brent Rooker or Soderstrom or Lawrence Butler. But yeah, there's some pop there. My thought here as well is that if I had a lot of what I would call more slappy hitters, I probably wouldn't have gone that route. But there's some guys here who can offer some power. So as long as you're mixing and matching.
There went Lodolo. I was going to suggest Lodolo for your next pick.
Yeah, I'm thinking pitcher too. So what do you, out of the current crop?
It'd be Cabrera for me. Cabrera and Lodolo are my favorite pitchers around this range. I think Rogers is also fine. And then Rodon, if you have a really good staff already full of guys who are like, confident in their innings projections, which you do, by the way, then I think you can eat the fact that Rodon's not going to be there for some time at the start of the season, right? It's like Rodon's one of those guys where like I don't like drafting hurt pitchers, but his ceiling on a per inning basis is good enough to make it worth the risk, depending on the rest of the staff.
Yeah, I agree. He's slightly there lower or past ADP, so it becomes one of those. Maybe if he's still there next pick, then he's definitely on the radar. Garrett Cole too. I mean, he's going to pop up in a couple more rounds.
Yeah,
it's a risk, but
yeah. But when you have 6 really good pitchers right now, so like you can take risk with your 7th pick. Like I would not be drafting a Joe Musgrove or a Hurston Waldrep with my last pitcher on this team. Your pitchers are really good, right? So like I'd want to shoot for ceiling. I'd want to go for like an Emmett Sheehan or a Garrett Cole or a Rodon or a Snelling, someone who, the floor is terrifyingly low, but the ceiling is really, really high if everything goes right for them. Because this team isn't dead if you get, a 0 from your last pitcher, right? Like this team has enough good pitching to survive that.
Agreed. And I mean, this draft has really been a lesson in just kind of letting the board dictate a little bit of the strategy because, I mean, I try not to really come in with a real strong strategy, and I'm generally going for like a 7-7-6, 7-6-7 type roster, but we can hit 8 obviously for depending on how it builds. But yeah, it is interesting. I mean, it doesn't seem like, especially where these stacks, we've gotten a lot of breaks so far. I haven't felt like we've been sniped, which is always a good feeling. But
yeah, no, I love it. I mean, this team is shaped up really nicely so far. I'd put Ramirez on your queue just so we don't forget about him. Oh, you have him there. Never mind. There he is. Sorry.
Right? Yep.
I just didn't notice him. That was my mention of the late round stack.
No, he's The
Stowers.
Marlins. I want to talk about Owen Casey later too, and Xavier Edwards. But
Yeah.
I love Agustin Ramirez, and I'm a little bit. I probably will pass on Salvi if I know we can get Ramirez. I don't have a. I guess maybe this is. I'll ask you. Do you ever try to not have too many catchers on the team, knowing
I
that they're going to take days off more so?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think Salvi is a catcher, but I really don't draft catchers. Like I have them ranked pretty far down. Um, I generally only draft catchers if it's a significant stack. Like if I already have 3 Braves, I might draft Baldwin. If I have 3 Dodgers, I might draft Smith.
Mm-hmm.
But like they're just not getting enough at bats. Now, Salvi's a DH at this point, right? So I think he's kind of a different breed. But generally speaking, I shy away from catchers because you need ceiling performances, right? This isn't a managed league where you can bench a guy when he's not starting, or you're everyone else is rostering catchers too, and so it's okay that you're only getting 4 plate appearances from your catcher because so is everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
William Contreras also an exception because he DHs a lot, right? There's a couple of exceptions to this rule where they're going to get full time at bats, but most of these guys aren't. So, there goes Salvi. You got sniped on him. Have funny. Of all the places to get sniped, they'd rather get sniped
there
like
goes
the
that one.
16th round, right?
And now we're going to talk poorly about him. He's old. He probably doesn't have strong knees anymore.
Oh, he's totally done. Yeah, absolutely done. Honestly, you could just finish pitcher and get like Sheehan and just call it a day because all the hitters are safe at past pick 200. So Sheehan's one of my favorite late round pitchers too because. I mean, on a per inning basis, that guy is a stud. The Dodgers are another one of those pitcher whispering teams that is just really good at developing pitchers. I think on a per inning basis, Sheehan is a stud.
He's a super big prospect. I know they trust him a lot.
Dodgers going to win 1 billion games.
Yeah, Snell's already a little bit hurt.
Yeah,
and to be honest, just looking at the positions, like I'd be comfortable here if the next 3 picks were Ramirez, Vaughn, and Bogarts, for instance.
Yeah, I mean, you could fill out your team just from here and feel good about it, right? Be all correlation. If you fill out your team with just players from this list, and you only and you get Ramirez, so you have a Marlin, or let's say you get at least one Marlin.
Right.
You would have what? Would Wilson be the only unstacked hitter at that point?
I believe so.
Is that right? Yeah. So, I mean, tons of correlation on this roster. Like, you've got to feel good about the correlation. I mean, that's this is, everything's shaping up really nicely.
Yeah, it's always fun to do an underdog, but of course you can never dictate what other humans are going to do around you. So, there's 4 picks left. So I would just say reiterate what I just said before, where, my personal opinion would be, hey, let's get at least one more of at least 2 of these 3 teams. Yep. And then, we probably want one more outfielder at least, even though we're comfortable with the 5. But if we were to get these 4, that would be great. And we'll just see how the next.
Yeah. I mean, I'd also be tempted, if you need a flyer on an outfielder, like a Willie Castro, a Matt Wallner, those guys I think are great as last round picks. I'm also very high in Wallner. But yeah, Agustin Ramirez, I don't know what people aren't seeing about him. And it's not like it's just me being a fanboy here. Sorry, let me go look at I am too. When I look at ATC has him projected for 2.1 underdog points per at bat. That's not elite, right? But that's good. Most infielders, most of the infielders that are drafted around that range are projected for under 2 per at bat. Most of the guys who are projected for 2.1 are the guys being drafted around pick 100 to 150. So you've got some edge there. He's got power. He's got speed. He's hitting an improved lineup. This guy was a stud last year. I don't know why. Projection systems like him, but underdog drafters don't. He's actually currently my highest owned player.
Oh, is he really? That's interesting.
Overall. Yeah. Let me see if that's still right. Let's go look just in case. I don't be.
He's 21 and 16 stolen bases last year as he is a catcher, but he's going to hit in the middle of the Marlins order. The Marlins surprised some people last year, but there's some good players there.
Let's see, 12-person, $15. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I probably have too much of him currently. So my draft style, by the way, I try to balance exposures later. And so I just draft the players I like early, and then I kind of look at where my exposures are, and I'm like, oh, I have a little too much of this guy, I better back off. I currently have 50% Agustin Ramirez, 40% Matt Wallner, 37% Tanner Bybee, 35% Parker Messick, 32% George Kirby, 32% Alec Burleson, 30% Waldrop, Who else? Who else is high up there? 25% Kyle Stowers, 25% Brandon Woodruff. So like, point is, I'm very, very high on Ramirez. I need to probably back off a little bit because that's a lot of exposure, even as a late round pick. Like in baseball, it's just too volatile. But one of my favorite players, like one of my
But
favorite
that is honestly, that's taking a stand, right? I would say you're slightly above average with how other drafters play. I think frequently you see some players who are like max 30% maybe highest exposure to any player. And so I support that completely. I think I said this a little earlier, but I've been trying to talk myself down to become a little bit more of a parity drafter, which of course I'll probably end up somewhere where I'm a little uncomfortable that I have like a share of everybody. But at least in the moment I'm in now, I'm trying to get enough exposure because I've had some years too where, I'm only getting, I don't know, 5% or less teams to the, into the playoffs out of the first round. So.
And it sucks if you're like, I mean, it really sucks if you really like a player a lot, and then like he's just not underneath your couple of best teams, and you're like, well, crap, And we've seen that if you play DFS. I'm sure you've had that too, right? If you have like, I had 50% of this guy, I just didn't have any of the right teams, and he smashed, and I should have just gone 100. And it's different with late round guys, right? Like you can survive your last pick not doing anything, right? Like if he does, it's awesome, but you're generally not relying on that pick, right? I would not want to have like 100% or 50% of a first round pick. I think that's taking too big a stand on those guys. So the farther back in the draft you get, I think the more flexible you can be on your max.
And you said this, you said this before as well, but it's really true. I mean, there's going to be a rare time where you get a Cal Raleigh season like you did last year.
That was wild.
Drafted so late. Oh man, I drafted him in the 7 innings.
He was the highest scoring infielder.
He was insane. And
Bobby Witt.
Do you remember what his ADP was roughly last year? Was it 200 or was it just?
I want to say it was. I mean, it was late. If he was drafted, I think he was drafted in most leagues. So I don't think he was going undrafted, but it was late. I mean,
he was incredible. I mean, to do what he did, and I was just going to say the year before that, I do a little bit of the 7th inning stretch, the second half underdog season. And I remember I might have done 15 teams or something, and I drafted Cal Raleigh. He was having a decent season, but it wasn't anything compared to last year. I think I drafted him on like 80% of those rosters, and he was going undrafted, and he had a good finish, and so he's on my radar last year, but not nearly for what he did.
Yeah, 60 home runs. I mean, that was insane.
To him, but.
I want to note, by the way, we were talking about these guys earlier. So Cam Schlittler, one thing with these young pitchers I like to do is I like to look at their minor league track records because that can give you some kind of hint for how many innings they might throw this year. A good rule of thumb is that guys rarely blow past their previous year's innings. As professional organizations stretch out young pitchers, they tend to let them go like maybe 20, 30 innings more than their previous high. And so Schlittler 2 years ago threw 120 innings. Last year he threw 150. So he should really have effectively no restrictions. He's not going to hit 200, but no one hits 200 these days. That's really rare. So he's effectively no restrictions, I would think. Right? He made 28 starts, 149 2/3 innings. Trey Savage, and I think I actually need to lower him a little bit. The talent is good. The strikeout potential is awesome, but there are two warts with Savage. One is only 112 innings last year, which makes it hard to see him going over maybe 130, 140. He's only 22. So it's like, I just don't see them pushing him to like past 150 innings. So the one hand is like, I think he's going to miss some starts somewhere. We don't know where. Assuming he doesn't get hurt, the nightmare scenario is they shut him down close to the end of the season, which is what actually often happens with young pitchers. Is they shut them down or they shift them to the bullpen towards the end of the season, and so then right when you're in the playoffs, the time when you need them the most, they're gone. So that's a possibility. And the second thing with Savage is his strikeouts are awesome, massive strikeout rates at every level of the minors. I mean, just incredible strikeout stuff. But he's wild. I mean, he can get really wild. Like last year in the minors, he walked 3.8 walks per 9 innings. And in the minors, when guys usually swing at everything, that's a lot. Walked 4.5 guys per 9 innings in his 3 starts in the majors. So, and the point is not to say that makes him a bad pitcher, right? There's guys who can succeed with high walk rates. Nolan Ryan had a high walk rate, right? Blake Snell famously has a very high walk rate and is still a successful pitcher. But it stops them from going deep into games because it builds up their pitch count, which makes them, they get out of the game faster, and you want those quality starts. So, the Savage, I love the talent. I question the ceiling over the course of a season. The ceiling in a given start is awesome. The ceiling over a season, I'm concerned about.
And I think that supports too. It's a really good point you made on the age, right, and the experience, because especially as the season goes on, the baseball season's incredibly long. 6 months is a long time. And you tend not to think about, we always think about the reverse, right? It's the guys that get called up and they're there, right? And those are maybe some advantages here in the last couple of rounds. But you never want to, in my opinion, you don't want to fill a roster with a lot of players. Like if you have Savage, don't also draft Schlitter, right? Yeah. There's just a lot of risk there. And if you have a similar profile in those guys, it's not really a complementary roster in my mind.
Yeah, you want to balance your floor and your ceiling, right? Because you need good scores every week, but you also need the possibility of spike tweaks that can really separate you.
Right. I'll mention one other thing that I'm always a little bit, it's on my radar, and obviously I'll preface this by saying I'm not a doctor, but there is some data out there that I've seen last couple of years about guys who have had the highest average of fastball velocity the previous season, essentially getting hurt, right, the next year. I don't have the list in front of me, but the guy, Hunter Green is the guy that I think of for this year, who's been historically healthy, but just throws so hard. Chase Burns is a teammate of his. I think he's essentially another flamethrower, right? But these guys who are starters and they're touching 100, it takes a rare breed to be able to stay healthy that whole season.
Well, honestly, actually, Hunter Green has not been historically healthy. He hasn't missed a full season. I think he had TJ as a prospect, but he hasn't made 30 starts in a year, and he hasn't pitched above 150 innings. So I think we've seen that from Green.
Has he had? I'm going to look up his injury history now.
I will know.
A big surgery.
I think he had TJ as a prospect. Let's see.
Yeah, maybe he was younger. He's 107.
Schwellenbach, though, is actually a really good example of this. Are you getting Vaughn with your last pick? Is that what you're hoping for?
Yeah. I'm going to go for it, yes.
Okay. We'll review the team in just a minute. Yeah, he had Tommy John in 2019, but then he had, 2 IL stints for a grade 1 right groin strain 2025. 2022, he had a shoulder strain. That's all that Gemini is listing, but he also there's other stuff in there, because if you look at his innings counts, he just hasn't thrown that many innings.
Sure.
I would say Schwellenbach, though, or our boy Schwellenbach, right? He's a great example of that, though, because Schwellenbach, he showed up last year with significantly increased velocity, and then he shattered his elbow. It wasn't a ligament, like his elbow fractured throwing a pitch. And then, he missed the season, went through off season, was viewed as healthy. It was like, great, he's coming back. I was excited to roster him, and then he's hurt again. He's on the 60-day IL, expecting to miss significant time. So, like, yikes, right? Like the big spike is rough. What they put, elbow,
the human
60-day
body
DL.
is just not meant to handle that.
So I agree that I'm wary of like the super high velocity guys, or the guys who have a big spike in velocity, because that can indicate that they're doing something unsustainable, that's just physically unsustainable, and putting themselves at higher injury risk. And you think about how pitchers pitch these days, and there does seem to be, and MLB guys will say this, like, I'm not one, I can't say that I know, but like MLB pitchers will talk about this, and they'll say that like it feels like the pressure in the league is like you have to perform all the time, and so like they feel like they're in a spot where they have to be all out every single pitch, max effort, max velocity, max spin, because all that stuff's being measured constantly. And it's like, you can have good results, but if your spin rate's not high enough, you're not going to get a big contract, And so like these pitchers are just going out max effort all the time. Whereas if you go back 20, 30 years, you would see pitchers throwing 92, 93 consistently throughout the game. But then in big moments, they kind of reach back and throw 96, right? Like, you don't see Hunter Green reaching back and throwing 104. Like, he's throwing 100 every pitch. That's his max velocity, right? Like, he's going all out all the time. And that is increased injury risk, right?
Right. Yeah, and he is a guy too that I guess he does have the body for that velocity, right? Because he's a pretty large human. But when you do get some of these other guys that maybe they're a little more wiry, or they're more of like I'll just say like the Tim Lincecum.
Lincecum is one of my favorite guys, and he was only throwing 100 for 2 years, right?
but he was using every pound in his body.
Yeah, I'm a Giants fan. I love Timmy.
Yeah, he's great.
Right, let's look at this team. Let's look at this team.
You know, at first glance, so I would say it doesn't feel top heavy, right? Like I reached a little bit for Tatis up front, and you know, you might not look through it and say, all right, we've got a ton of like real name value, but I do feel like the positional groups are balanced. I really like the correlation. We don't have any team of 4, but I think we have 3 teams of 3 and 1 team of 2, and then one unstacked in Wilson.
Wait, that's 12. We're missing somebody. We're missing somebody. 2 Royals. Oh, 2 Royal. Oh no, 3 Marlins, 3 Brewers, 3
Brewers, and
Padres.
3 Padres. Marlins, Brewers, Padres. Yep, and then
we have
2.
4. No, we have 4 Brewers. We have 4 Brewers. Sorry.
Oh, that's what it is.
1.
Yep.
Yeah. And then Wilson's the one instead. Yeah. So 12 of the 13 hitters are stacked. Let's look through this really briefly. So yeah, no big reaches. Right, we started Tatis, Churio, Merrill, Yelich, so 2 pairs of 2. Then we got Stowers, so 5 outfielders in the first 6 picks.
Right.
That were very heavy on outfield, and so now one of your last picks was Owen Casey from the Marlins, who is an interesting young guy. And if you look at his projection, like go pull up his name on Underdog, type his name on Underdog, so you can see the Underdog projection.
Yep.
Right,
he's not about him too.
He's not projected super robustly because he's not projected for a lot of at-bats. Like I have ATC hasn't projected for 382 at-bats. I put in at-bats instead of plate appearances, which is stupid of me, but I did it and I'm stuck there. I don't want to redo it by hand. But 382 at-bats, right? So like, okay, maybe that's possible, but like he's an interesting young prospect, and the Marlins are a team that they're going to be better this year, but they're probably not contending, most likely. So it makes sense. Like they're a team that's going to give opportunity to young guys who are playing well. And so if he's playing well, he could get more opportunity. And then all of a sudden that his old projectionist goes out the window, right? Like a lot of these projections on these late round guys are based on at-bats, not productivity per at-bat. And the at-bats can change wildly depending on what happens. A guy gets hurt in front of him, all of a sudden he's a full-time player. He plays well at the start of the season, and the other guy that doesn't play well, he's a full-time player, right? Like it's so easy for those at-bat projections to change.
Yeah, a couple quick things on Casey too. He was traded for Cabrera, right? The Cubs gave up on him, traded him to the Marlins. So we have the full trade on this roster, ironically enough. But when they, Cabrera was their 2nd, 3rd, maybe 4th rotation pitcher, so they gave up a real asset to get a real asset, and I think they're trying to compete. They have a lot of younger guys who are coming together at the right time. He has very elite bat speed. That's always important. I'm always reminded of Clint Frazier, because I'm a Yankees fan. Clint Frazier was always like going to be the next coming of everyone. And he had this amazing bat speed that their GM would always just talk about his bat speed, and never came to fruition. But that being said, that is a key trait to look for and project out. And then there's also an incentive because of the trade from the Marlins. I read something in Sports Illustrated, which was essentially that the Marlins are incentivized that he is on the roster opening day. And I believe it's in his first 2 or 3 years of his contract. If he finishes in either like the top 10 of Rookie of the Year or something high like that, where he has a really strong season, they get better draft compensation. So you don't see that a lot in the MLB. And I read that and I was like, oh, that's really interesting. Added just enough to add him to this roster. And you can also look at Rookie of the Year odds. Not that you need to really anger on that, but when you get into the 19th, 20th range, I think if you look up Rookie of the Year odds right now, Savage, I can never say his last name.
I have no idea. I'm awful at pronouncing names.
And then there's a couple other guys on the NL side that it's a hard award to predict, but I believe Casey's top 8 maybe.
Weatherholt's going to be in there, actually.
Weatherholt, right? On the Cardinals.
He's interesting, right? I mean, he has absolutely he is a big human, like elite power, right? Like his power is, Fangraphs has him rated as a 70 for raw power on their prospects report, and Fangraphs is my personal favorite source for prospect data. It's if he can make contact and keep the strikeout rate reasonable, right? And so we'll see. Who knows, right? Like a lot of big time power hitters struggle to make contact, especially early in their careers. But like he only had 15 batted balls in the majors last year, so his StatCast data is minimal. But in that, he's 70th percentile bat speed and 114 mile an hour max exit velocity. So max exit velocity is an interesting data point because like you gotta be strong to hit the ball really hard. And so, surprise, surprise, you look at max exit velocity, Shohei Ohtani's up there, Vlad Guerrero, O'Neal Cruz, Aaron Judge, James Wood, like the guys you'd expect. He would be top 50 by max exit velocity of all hitters last year. And keep in mind, that may not be his maximum over 600 plate appearances, right? He only had like 22 plate appearances or something like that. So, he's up there with like Matt Olson, Byron Buxton, William Contreras, George Springer, Tyler Soderstrom, Austin Riley, Freddie Freeman, all good hitters. So can he make contact? I don't know. But the power's there. If he makes contact, it's going to go hard, right? Yeah. Like there's ceiling. The point is there's ceiling there, right?
It's going to maintain a role, right? And big humans hit the ball hard.
Yeah. And so scroll up a little. Let's talk about the infield.
Absolutely.
So, infield, infield was the latest position to start, but that's okay because infield is such a deep position, and unless you're getting my personal opinion on infield is once you get past the first couple guys like Bobby Witt, Jose Ramirez, Lindor pre-hamate bone, I feel like there's not that big of a difference between like the third round infielders and like the seventh round infielders, like guys like Vinny, Ben Rice, Naylor. Like those guys to me feel pretty similar ceiling wise to guys like Freddie Freeman and Manny Machado. And so like, that's how I tend to feel. And so if I don't get one of the really early ones, I'm totally fine waiting there too. And it lets you make a really strong roster around them. Now, obviously every roster is weak somewhere. To me, infield is the best position to be weak at because of how deep it is, right? So Vinny's ceiling is as high as most guys not named like Bobby Witt and Jose Ramirez. Garcia's ceiling is not that far off, right? Contreras' ceiling is not that far off. Contreras fits our biggest stack, the Brewers. Right. Jacob Wilson, again, is more floor and mid than ceiling, but like he helps stabilize the position, right? He's probably not in a week when the Brewers suck and the Royals suck. Wilson is a guy who's going to pop up in your active slot because he's probably going to be a pretty steady Eddie kind of guy. Ramirez, high ceiling. It's like Xander Bogaerts stacks with our two Padres. He's probably my least favorite individual player on the roster because I just don't like Xander Bogaerts that much. But he fits the roster, right? Like, and sometimes you got to do that. You got to go for the guys who fit the roster, even if you don't like them, because math, right? Like we play a game of math. And then Andrew Vaughn, we talked about the ceiling of him. And then the pitchers, and we kind of already talked about them. Like, you don't have Crochet or Scanes, but like this pitching staff, every single one of those pitchers has, SP1 or like mid to high end SP2 kind of ceiling. And when I say that, I'm using the classic fantasy term of SP1. You're only talking 12-team leagues for our listeners, right? In fantasy baseball. And so SP1 means top 12. SP2 means between 13 and 24, the next 12. If things break right for these guys, like, Yuri Perez, like these guys all have really good stuff. They all should be operating without any real innings restrictions. Again, it's hard to predict 200 innings. That rarely happens anymore. But like none of these guys should be projected for 130 innings. They should all be operating pretty unrestricted. Sheehan maybe a little capped, but he's not as young as he's 26. So usually by that time, even though he hasn't thrown a ton of innings, like the training wheels are a little bit off and they'll just let him go as long as he's healthy and pitching well. There's just a lot of ceiling in that pitching staff. Like that's one of my like favorite pitching staffs I've seen for a while. I really like that staff, but you just happen to get like, you didn't reach for him. You just happen to get a lot of my very favorite pitchers all on one roster. Well, like I said, if you'd gotten Sanchez instead of Yamamoto, like I'd be just over the moon.
And I think we were one pick away from it, and I agree with you on Sanchez over him as well.
Yeah,
and I would say the same, right? Like a very similar sentiment to this is that I try to leave every draft where you say, hey, what did I do differently? What was unique maybe about this particular draft? And sometimes it's a real intent, and sometimes there's not. And this is one where it's not, because what I would say about this draft is we went almost perfect out of the gates on outfield. Just by starting out with, I think we started 5 outfielders in a row, or 4, and then 5 out of the first 6. But then it also kind of has perfect correlation. And if you want perfect correlation, you're not going to have a roster you leave the room with and say, oh, I really love this roster. Because I could stare at this infield position for a while and probably say, it's not like my favorite, but it does fit like a glove on the roster. And so if there is good complementary pieces, That's probably a good thing. I try to remind myself that too, where it's just the more you like the roster, likely the worse it's going to do sometimes, and
Unfortunately,
you
it's
almost have to
often
fight your
true.
own biases, right? With
Yeah.
who you like and why you like them, and what
Yeah,
you really
like in a
think.
vacuum, like Bogarts, Vaughn, I like guys like Sal Stewart and Alec Burleson more, but
Sure.
these guys fit the roster a lot better, right? And you've got to balance that of thinking like what fits the roster, what fits the stacking I'm trying to build versus what fits the in a vacuum pick. Who's my favorite in a vacuum player? But the problem is, well, problem for other people. Most people draft in the who's my favorite in a vacuum player way, and which is why
Mhm.
they're not correlated enough, right? Like it's funny to me that NFL best ball draft is so much more sophisticated. There's so much more money in it, right? So there's more content focused on it, more projections focused on it. So the NFL best ball scene is more sophisticated at roster construction currently um, than the MLB one or the NBA one for that matter. And but it's funny because baseball was the first sport for DFS where like everyone was like, oh yeah, stacking, of course, duh. Like, of course, I want to put all hitters from one team in my roster because when they score runs, like this guy drives them in, this guy gets an RBI, this guy gets a run, like it's correlated, right? Like baseball is where stacking came from in DFS, and
Right.
yet when you look at best ball, people don't stack enough, and they stack. You watch best ball football, and they're stacking as they should, right? As they should do, but that expertise hasn't like made its way over into baseball, and it will, right? Like the game only gets sharper over time, but like that's why we should be grateful to be playing now when we have this edge.
Completely agree. And there is an element too of like the just in football, it's a little more blatant, right? There's a quarterback, there's a receiver, there's a running back, and so the scores are always involving multiple players. Baseball, the scores always involve multiple players. You just don't see it as much, right?
Mm-hmm.
The person who hits then runs the other way. The person who scores runs home, and so it's so highly correlated to your point, but it's just not as in your face. The one thing I'll say too is that if you like baseball, MLB Best Ball, you should prep with hockey Best Ball on Underdog. I've done a little bit of that this year, more so than in years past, and I actually really enjoyed it because that's another sport where stacking is king.
Yeah, you're stacking
Obviously, it was
lines.
2 assists and 1 goal on every. So I'm not going to make this a hockey podcast, but I have found that there's just a ton of correlation in drafting because I've had some success the last couple of years, and I'm kind of surprised at why. And then I think it's just from drafting baseball and football.
Yeah. I mean, the same principles apply, right? You've got to figure out where the differences are in the sport, but overall, the principles you can be the same. And like, yeah, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. I don't know if it's years playing baseball, versus, but you can watch it play out and see how I think where the opportunity is. And to me, it all just smells like opportunity, right? Like, cool. I don't know if I'll win this season. I sure hope I do. But like, I feel incredibly confident that I have an edge.
But I just lost your audio for a second there, Xandamere.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I was just saying I
There
don't
you
know
go.
how
Now you're back.
I think I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I feel incredibly confident that I have an edge drafting in this format right now.
Yep.
And so I just want to push that while I can. Hey, let's talk one last thing really quick. Injury guys. We've had a bunch of injury news in baseball. Like Schwellenbach is effectively dead. Anthony Santander is effectively dead. And probably just off draft boards entirely for those guys. They're missing most of the season, if not all of it. But there's 3 guys that all in the same like day had news that they broke their hamate bones. And the hamate bone is a little bone in the hand that gets pressured when you swing a bat. And hitters sometimes break that bone if they're hit by a pitch, or sometimes just the bat fractures it. And it's about a 6-week recovery time, roughly speaking. And the challenge, though, is that it's common, not always, but it's common for a hitter's power to be sapped a little bit when they come back for a while. And so there's not enough of a sample size to really quantify that effectively in a reasonable, predictive way. But we know it happens. And so we have Corbin Carroll, Francisco Lindor, right? So a first-round pick, a second-round pick, and then also Jackson Holiday, later picks, not as critical. All went down with hamate bone surgery in the same day. Now, the Orioles have immediately said Holiday won't be ready at the start of the season. Who knows if that's true or not. They won't have to commit to that, right? But he may or may not be. it's likely, I think, there's every possibility that Carroll and Lindor don't miss time, right? They could be, it's 6 weeks, it's 6 weeks to the start of the season. They could be back, or they might miss 1 week. So they're probably not missing material time. The question is, do they lose some power? They may not. Some guys come back and do not lose any power. But there's clearly additional risk there. And when you're paying premium picks, like that risk affects their draft position. And so the question is, where should they go? Because I've been really struggling with this. Like, I adjusted my rankings. I moved Carroll from, was bouncing back and forth with him and Acuna at 4th and 5th. I now have Carroll at 14th, and I now have, oh God, where did I put him? Lindor I have at 36th. So I moved them both back. Carroll almost a full round, Lindor roughly 1 full round. They could be screaming values at that point. You could get Lindor, and he could be, if they come back and they don't have any, power loss, then you made a whole round of value by just drafting the current ADP. Or they could have significant power loss, and you could be, getting suckered into thinking that, like, you're getting a great deal, but you're, as to use the old stock market phrase, you're trying to catch a falling knife. Mm-hmm. So what do you think? Like, where do you draft and the other problem is you can't wait to see how your roster turns out, right? Because you have to draft these guys early, or not at all. So you can't be like, oh, I'll see how my roster's looking before I decide. So how do you think about these guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think my 2 cents would be, and you can see in this draft, Carroll went higher than consensus than the rankings that you just mentioned, right? He went 9, which is probably a little bit too early. I would also have him around the turn. Same thing with Lindor, 28 versus, I think you said, your 36 ranking. I think it's one of those things where it's going to be case by case, right? Some of them will definitely heal quicker than others. It's impossible for us to predict. Mm-hmm. With Holiday, the Orioles are likely going to shelter him a little bit more because he's a top prospect. They have a lot invested in him.
And they have like 85 infielders.
Yeah, I mean, and they have a lot of prospects. Great farm system. I would say Lindor, kind of towards the end of his career, I'd expect him to maybe heal the slowest, just because he's a little bit older. And then he's also a very rich person, right? Like, he's going to come back when he's ready. I don't know how else to say that.
Yeah, that's fair.
And
fair.
Carroll, I would say, I guess I'm working backwards here. Carroll has a lot to prove, right? He was amazing a couple years ago. And I believe last year, horrible first half, and then came on at the very end of the season, right? So his end of season stats were pretty strong. So that's maintaining his first round value here. But he hasn't really, he's not a consensus even top 5 outfielder, and he has the talent to be that. So I would say when you do grab one of them, you're absolutely right. You have to adjust your roster. Definitely draft healthier guys after you take a risk. And then also maybe add one to the position group, right? If you're drafting Carroll, make sure that's on a team with 7 outfielders, just so you can, lock in a couple more points and give yourself more of a chance. But it's an imperfect science.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of aligned with you. I'd say there's 2 ways to do it, right? The other way to do it is to draft a lot of other outfield heavy if you draft Carroll. So you don't need 7, you only need 6 in that way. Because the trick, if you do your normal sort of outfield heavy draft and you draft 7 outfielders, now you're left with being light at infielders and only 6 of them. Where normally if you're light at infielders, you have 7, and that kind of offsets a little bit. But like, for me, I've been getting Carroll. When Carroll slips into the 2nd round, that's where I get excited about him. Especially if he gets past like the turn. I've gotten Carroll as late as I think pick 17 or 18, maybe 19. Past Churio, it's a no-brainer to me that Carroll's the next best outfielder on the board. Like, I think he's clearly better than like Langford, Anthony, PCA, Merrill, etc. Past Churio, it's clearly Carroll. And then it's kind of that in between, like Rooker and like that, then Churio, Wood, Yordan block. After Devers, Rooker, I'm like, somewhere in there. And then Lindor, to me, I think he was clearly a 2nd round outfielder, clearly a top 5 outfielder to me. Now he's more like back end top 10. I think he's kind of closer to like Matt Olson, Freddie Freeman, Caminero. He's kind of in that grouping more. Probably more ceiling than those guys. Probably more ceiling than Freddie Freeman and Matt Olson, certainly at this point in their careers. Caminero, I think we don't know for sure who he is yet, right? but also lower floor. Like Olsen and Freeman have like rock solid floors. Like, Lindor a little bit shakier. So, and those are kind of the decisions we have to make, right? And when you draft early, you take that risk, right? I drafted some Schwellenbach. Those rosters are, I don't want to say dead, but they better be really, really right on every other pick, every other pitcher to survive getting a 0 from not a early round pitcher, but I mean, early for where I draft pitchers round. Schwellenbach was my SP1 on some rosters, or SP2. So tough for those rosters to survive the loss of that. But that's the risk we take. The flip side of that is we get early, draft ADP, and we're already seeing ADPs shift, right? We're seeing Yamamoto shift back. We've seen Kyle Stauer shifting up. Like, we're seeing ADP change. And so, you lead into some injury risk by drafting early, but you also benefit from being able to draft at less sharp ADPs before ADP kind of reaches more of a consensus as we get more information through spring training. Like for example, I've drafted a fair bit of Hurston Waldrop and a fair bit of Robbie Snelling, neither of whom are confirmed to begin the season on the MLB roster. If it is confirmed at the end of spring training or during spring training that those guys have made the roster, or even just they pitch really, really well in spring training and people start thinking, oh, these guys are probably going to make the roster, their ADP goes up a lot, right? Like Snelling is they're probably both in the 150s, somewhere in there, give or take 20 maybe. Right now you get them with your last round pick. So, you win some, you lose some with the drafting early, is my point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, and one other big factor, right, this year is the World Baseball Classic.
Yeah, it's true.
March, right? And so there are going to be injuries in that. Yeah. There are going to be guys who are playing on, let's just say, a country team that doesn't have as many MLB players, and they're batting cleanup, and they're treated like the superstar on that team. And all of a sudden you start thinking about them a little bit differently. There will be, just thinking about even like the Japanese team, right, and the powerhouse that they'll always bring. There's some players there, right? Like some of these, like the guy in the White Sox, Murakami, right? I believe.
Yeah.
If he has an incredible, and he's also coming to the major leagues this year, you're going to see a huge pop in his ADP. So yeah, I'm ready for it. I mean, there's going to be a lot of movement in March, and I wouldn't blame anybody if they even said, I'll just wait until that tournament's over and see how much room is left in some of these to draft.
And that is a totally reasonable approach. It's not my approach, because I think here's the thing: if you know baseball, or if you have access to good resources that know baseball, cough, cough, hint, hint, that I think that you have an edge in drafting early, because overall you have more information than most of the other people drafting right now. More and better information. If you are a more casual player who doesn't know baseball, or doesn't really have access to that kind of good resources, or doesn't have the time to spend digging into understanding them, then you'd probably benefit more from waiting and drafting later when you know more information. There's fewer unknowns. So that's how I think about it. That's what I would recommend to somebody if they're like, what should I do? Should I draft early or late? That's how I think about it personally.
And that's never talked about in baseball. It's talked about all the time in football, right? What is the best draft window? When did the BBM winner draft? It's June? Oh, I should do it all in June next year, right?
Right. There's like the king of small sample size arguments, right? Exactly. There've been like, how many BBMs have there been in history? Like,
right. That's the definition of kind of chasing last year's, wins, right? Like, it's not going to play out the same exact way, and you can't always prepare for it. But as long as you have a strategy, as long as you commit to it, you hope that things break for you.
Yeah. Man, this has been fun. We have to do this again. I feel like we've just been going. I mean, we've got the draft ended 30 minutes ago. We've just been chatting. So everyone's probably hung up by now and closed the stream. They're bored of the video.
Well, JM would remind everybody, right? You can listen on 1.5x speed, and let's
Can
go.
You on YouTube, actually?
You can speed it up. I don't know if it's 1.5. You can do 1.2 maybe.
I'm like such a YouTube scrub. Like, I am not a social media person. So, okay. We should put that at the start of the video. But yeah, you're right. I mean, this is a long video, but hopefully a worthwhile video. So, I know it's getting late for you. It's funny, like half an hour ago, I was like, when the draft ended, I was like, maybe we should just do another one while I have him here. But now it's been another half an hour. It's getting late where you are. So thank you, though. Thanks for coming to hang out. It's fun to have another voice on this, to get another perspective. I didn't know that you were into MLB Best Ball until, very recently when you messaged me on Discord. I was like, hey, I do this. We should talk about it. But it's really exciting to, meet someone else who's into it, because it's such a niche, but it's an interesting niche, because it's not like League of Legends DFS niche where a handful of people play it and the prize pools are tiny. Like the prize pools are significant, like they're still big. So it's got that really cool spot where like you can actually win significant money, but still like it's kind of a niche and there's a big edge because most people don't know what they're doing, et cetera, et cetera. So, very exciting to meet someone else so I can talk to about strategy. Also gives our listeners, they don't have to be bored listening to my voice the entire time. You get some different perspectives. So yeah, thank you very much for joining. Really, really appreciate it. And have a good night.
If we'll see some good traction, we'll do it again if we see some good traction. But yeah, this was a blast.
We'll be rooting for this team too. This is a good team. I mean, I'm excited for this team. I did my first draft video of this. I noted I got a perfect 4-man Dodgers stack early. It just fell to me like exactly right. So it's really cool when you do a video and like everything falls perfectly.
So there's no better feeling, right? Because you don't. And again, our feelings don't matter once we draft. It doesn't really matter how we feel, but that's all we can do right now. So I'm totally with you.
All right, man. Well, thanks again. Have a good rest of your night, and we'll have to plan this again soon.
Thanks.
All right. Take care. Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching.
1 week season.